All right, so let's carry on with this whole topic. Let's focus on Hungary now. We know that Xi Jinping has just landed the last sort of 20 minutes or so. He's already in Budapest now, received a huge fanfare. So, Igor, let's just start with the basics here. What does this mean? I mean, this is now a European member state, Hungary. We have Xi Jinping on the ground. What does this mean for Hungary, but collectively also for the European Union? Is this ultimately more in the positive direction or negative direction? What's your insight?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your program. Let me also mention that while Xi Jinping it was in Serbia, the president of Kosovo, Osmani, is actually here in Dallas, visiting the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit and doing some events around the 20th anniversary of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. And it tells you sort of very vividly about the priorities that those two nations have and where they see their foreign policy and national security priorities. And in terms of Hungary and Serbia, these are part of the Chinese divide and conquer tactics in Europe. They are successfully sort of demonstrating that the economic leverage they have and the strategic leverage they have is starting to work. The European Union finally, within the last several years, started to think about its economic security strategy, including one that was released several years ago. And China, of course, it led to a lot of frictions with China, including on questions of human rights and a few other issues. So this visit to Hungary is for Xi Jinping very important to demonstrate that the Chinese model of influence is having success, and he'll tout these investments and other issues. I think they're going to go to they're going to go to Patch and tout some other issues there. So they want to demonstrate with this visit two things. One, Europe has alternatives other than the United States. China's economic model should be one that Europe should embrace, and in exchange for that, China will offer market access or offer some other economic incentives. And for Xi Jinping, these countries were chosen on purpose, and Hungary is an essential part of that, given Orban's government views on the war in Ukraine and on other geostrategic issues that frankly match Xi Jinping's own vision. And he knows he's not going to get a hard time about these issues in Budapest, whereas he probably got an earful in France and successfully ignored it. And certainly, in Serbia, he didn't hear about these issues that really trouble the Europeans.
It seems to be the case that this is sort of a tour de force by Xi Jinping in terms of dangling carrots in front of, people's eyes. And we know, according to Hungarian Foreign Minister, that there is an expected signing of 16 deals with Hungary between Hungary and China. And I wanted to ask you, what are those deals? What are we looking into? What could be the carrots that China is trying to dangle in front of Hungary's face?
Well, certainly market incentives are one, building more infrastructure, invest, for instance, that the Hungarians have started importing more Chinese electric vehicles, and Europe has obviously had some issues with the Chinese on that end and with overproduction and capacity. So there's a number of ways the Chinese can offer very serious incentives, as they've done around the world. This is the essence of the Belt and Road strategy. And so I think these agreements will target these types of areas of economic cooperation that are on their face very lucrative and can provide, jobs and other things that ordinarily, we should welcome these kinds of things. But with Chinese, these carrots come with a very significant stick, which is the geostrategic influence that Xi Jinping and China are trying to gain with having Hungary in this position of being, frankly, for lack of a better word, the supplicant, to Chinese foreign policy inside the EU. And again, it's the divide and conquer strategy. And also, the issues that I mentioned before, the grave concerns about the sort of some of Chinese-owned economic policy, like overproduction capacity and other, frankly, anti-competitive measures that China has taken over the years. Hungary, they're not going to hear about this. They're not going to hear about the war in Ukraine and the destabilizing economic and other things that has caused. So for the Chinese, these, the more the merrier when it comes to these agreements, because they serve, frankly, they serve Beijing's interests, but also they found a willing government in Orban to be able to implement those.
Right. Now, one question, Igor, is as well. I mean, we look at on the facts here. We have, massive investment by the Chinese in Hungary. We're the biggest investor in Hungary. You mentioned already the electronic vehicles. We look at major also Huawei development outside of China. I mean, on the face of it, this is a close market for a close destination for China. And I think the Hungarians or Orban will get a lot of flack for it. But let's scale out for a minute to the rest of you. I mean, look at a bigger player like Germany. Olaf Scholz was just in China not that long ago with his plane full of business leaders from across various sectors. Couldn't even fit all the ministers from the German government on there. So it's not just Hungary here. So what does that tell us a little bit about? I mean, he skipped Germany on this trip, but what does that tell us really? How much of a united policy does Europe really have when it does come to China?
Well, it tells you quite a bit, and that's an excellent point. This was, when Angela Merkel left, this was her sort of legacy to establish these relationships, and they were disrupted quite heavily by the EU's finally coming to terms with some of the thinking about its economic security. COVID, which was a major disruptor in EU Beijing relations, and Beijing basically, the China shut down for a number of years, and that's negatively impacted business. And so with the German economy slowing down, and with the war in Ukraine having some impact there, this is what they're pursuing as a sort of a counterbalance. And I think the impact on the European Union unity will be very significant and very detrimental, frankly, if Europe can't come out of this with a united vision on what they see. They finally designated China as a sort of strategic competitor, and had used some of the other tools like the human rights sanctions and so forth. And you'll see a lot of pressure to back away from that now in favor of economic incentives, and the ability to China to influence those is really still very significant. And for China, the benefit is their economy has relatively slowed down some, and they view the EU as a primary market, and they want to maintain that position and grow that position. The Chinese foreign minister said in March, that the EU's contradictory policy, where it's sort of a stoplight. When they come to a stoplight, it's all, every light is lit up, green, yellow, and red, and they only want to see green. This is what they want to achieve, and in order to achieve that, again, they're touting these types of models of economic relations they've established with Hungary, for instance, as something that they can offer other members of the EU. And of course, the major economies where there were already massive economic contacts, like Germany, they'll continue to do that.
Well, there seems to be I know that there is a Chinese curse saying, I hope you live in interesting times. And we do indeed live in interesting times. Igor Khrestin, thank you so much for joining us.
Really appreciate it.